Hi there, today I want to talk about why learning languages brings so much into your life. And I want to talk about my own experience. So here it is. I'm going to share 5 points that makes me continue learning languages. So the first one, thinking differently. I started learning English when I was 12. I'm French, by the way. And I started because I was watching anime and also Korean TV reality. And at the time, we didn't have French subtitles. The only subtitles available were in English. So that's how I started to learn, basically. And so when I started to learn, it was just a way for me to watch my favorite stuff. And then the more I learn English, now that I can speak fluently, I started to really love the language itself and really love the language process of learning, the learning process of learning. And also basically the fact that it can be so different between one language to the other. There will always be some differences. As a French person, I started to learn like American English. The mentality from America is totally different from the mentality of France. And so just by listening to content from American creator, it makes me think differently. And then when I think back and check French thinkers, for example, French creators, it can be so different. Just the same idea can be explained differently. And so it makes you reflect more. And that's why I really believe that the best way to be like thinking differently, one of the best way, or also which leads to my second point, being more open-minded, it's actually learning another language. It's more concrete to do that. And so just with, for example, knowing English right now, I'm able to listen to these great thinkers from before, like Indian thinkers that speak in English, or these American thinkers, these English thinkers, how they explain their ideas, how they view life right now. And it can be completely different from a French speaker, from a French person, just like me. And I just love that because it just makes me think about the difference between how I grew up in my own environment, the things I learned based on where I was born are completely different from someone else who was born in the US, for example. And that's what I love about learning. It's just like, just by knowing the language, you can bridge the gap. You can see the difference on the other side because someone else is explaining it. And it makes you reflect more and more about your own life. And that leads to the third point, which is realizing the differences between the way you grew up as a French person, me in that case, and the way you grew up as an American, as an Indian, as a Japanese, etc., etc. Just because I have access to this content. In my case, I grew up with double culture. Like I grew up with a French environment and my parents being Algerians. So I already got that double culture where I was thinking differently because it was that way in Algeria or this way in France. And it already gave me something. But then I realized that the more I was doing that with other languages, I was opened to a different world. And it made me really reflect more about the language itself, which is my own French language, how it works on the mind versus the English language versus the Portuguese versus the Spanish that I know. And then more and more, I know a little bit of Japanese, so I know it works completely differently compared to French and etc. And so when you have that constantly in your day-to-day life, when you learn a language, for example, right now I'm learning Portuguese, it makes me want to discover more about my own. It makes me want to see the differences, the similarities, and it just makes me reflect much more. It makes me have a critique about my own self and how I think. And I notice it more when I go back to France. When I talk to people who only know French, they have a different mentality. They have the French mentality only because they only know that. But in my case, since I live in Spain, since I know different languages, I have more view about life. I can see the different vision, and no vision is the best, the better, the right one, the wrong one. No, it's just like makes you see them, all of them at the same time, and then you choose what best fits you. Like, there are many things I love from the American culture and other not at all. Same with the French culture, same with the Spanish culture. And so when I'm picky about those, it just makes my life better because I try to experiment. I'm just like, okay, I love that about the American culture. I love just how they believe in the you can do anything. You can do everything. Everything is possible. You can create your own business. You can do this and this and this, which we didn't have in the French culture. French culture is more like just fit the mold. And yeah, just the classic way of education, and then you do you, but you don't have that push of trying, experimenting, making mistakes in France, because there is the mentality of the French that is more like everything needs to be perfect. You cannot make any mistakes, which I don't see in the American culture. That's why I love it. And then in the Spanish one, it just makes me think like, chill. You can take your time. Enjoy the little moments. And when I met my Italian best friend, it's the same. Nadia, like, enjoy the food. The food take time to cook. It's just like you take everything from the countries and try it, experiment, and you see if it makes your life better or not. And that leads to my fourth point, which is like talking to natives. When you know the language, it makes things much easier. I was talking to a friend recently who is Australian, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting the way she lived in Australia. Now she's in Spain, she's learning Spanish, and she notices the differences from her life in Australia, and she just embraces it. And I'm just like, that is the way of learning. And that is the open-mindedness that you get from language learning. And so at the same time, it makes the gap of being different much closer. When you know the language of the person, you can connect to that person faster. You can share experiences, you can learn from that person. It makes it so much fun. It makes life more interesting, more fulfilling. And that's why I really want to continue learning language for all my life. And for example, in the future, I'm planning to learn Italian so I can understand my best friend better. I'm planning to learn Vietnamese so I can understand my other best friend better. Like, many stuff like this. I want to do that all my life. And then it leads to the third point, which is like traveling. Traveling, knowing a language versus not knowing the language is a complete different experience. When I started studying in Spain for the first time, I went in Alicante. My Spanish was very bad. I barely talked Spanish. I basically knew Spanish about economy and marketing because of the university, but I wasn't able to do conversation with Spanish people, which led to me not really talk to Spanish people. But now that I live in Barcelona, now that I can speak Spanish better, I connect with Spanish people on another level. You understand the culture as well. And it makes it much more interesting compared to someone. I know so many people who don't speak Spanish at all and live here. And they miss out so much. They're just in their own bubble. And they don't see like the best of the culture. And the worst as well. And so, yeah, I really want to encourage you to think about it. If you know like 0 language except your own, like why do you want to learn, or like what makes it interesting for you to learn? It's a great motivation as well. Every time I feel like I don't want to study anything, I'm just like, but it makes you so happy, it makes you so fulfilled, it makes you a better person, or about everything that I mentioned today. And yeah, it just makes me want to learn languages for all my life, and I will continue to do that. So I just want to share my passion about learning languages in the podcast I'm doing, and that's it. I hope you do you, and that you are on your own language journey as well. Thank you.